when the UEG forbids the Digital Life Project, or DLP, a radical organization that thinks computers hold the key to humanity's future, violent demonstrations escalate. They're working on a program that would let people upload their thoughts onto a disk, but they don't have the funding to finish it, so they're continuously hacking the UEG and launching terrorist strikes against it. The UEG observes that people are losing faith in their initiative when the DLP makes yet another failed attempt, and they think about abandoning it. But Chinese envoy Zhou persuades everyone to proceed with the project's initial phase, which will be completed shortly and boost morale. In order to push it further and enable Earth to escape its gravitational pull, the first objective is to test the engine on the moon. Liu, a pilot, is among the many individuals undergoing astronaut training for this mission. When Liu arrives at the base, protesters have surrounded it. One of the demonstrators is able to slip inside despite the guards' best efforts to keep the irate crowd at away. Fortunately, trainee Han takes the man out with ease, leaving Liu so impressed that he envisions a future with her. The new recruits are given a tour of the facility and sent to the space elevator for their first test, while guards employ force to remove demonstrators. The cadets get a taste of what it's like to be in space with this elevator, the tallest building in human history. Many of them pass out because it rises so quickly, missing the station that is being built there for the project. After that, every cadet is kept occupied with training in a variety of areas, including hand-to-hand combat, handling weaponry, and frequent elevator rides until they stop passing out. To ensure they are in optimal physical shape, they undergo medical examinations and physical training. Liu and Han fall in love as they get to know one another during their training together. Liu gives cigarettes to the guards one day to encourage them to let him take a flower inside the facility, which he gives to Han the following time they ride the elevator. A fresh group of reserve astronauts show up that morning and board the elevator together. The engineers find out the system has been hacked when all of the outside drones start flying out of the hangar. Liu and Han discover that the new astronauts are changing into uniforms with the cadets' names when the elevator starts to ascend earlier than expected. When the drones outside start firing, everyone inside the bunker has to focus on using their own technology to defend the base. The drones are recognized as allies by the system, thus even though the pilots attempt to shoot with the planes, they are not targeted. Using missiles, the drones take advantage of this and destroy one of the elevators. The newcomers start locking the doors and the chairs in the elevator before robbing the cadets of their IDs and beating up anyone who dares to resist. Liu gets up from his chair in the other room and uses his glasses to burnish the lock screen so that the door opens. Liu pursues the terrorists after seeing to a friend who is bleeding, engaging in combat with them, until one of them is killed. Liu uses a fire extinguisher to pursue the other guy, but it's too late. The terrorist provides the elevator with access to the station while the drones are mounting a missile on them, all owing to the ID that was stolen. In the meantime, the base's scientists introduce the 550C, a sophisticated quantum computer that ultimately defeats hacking. Zero-G causes the elevators to be drawn back down while the drones start to crash into the ground and explode everywhere. This causes everyone to be shook. Han uses a mechanical arm to smash a window and assists Liu in taking out the terrorist while she continues to fight him. Liu then joyfully requests her flowers once more. Despite Liu jumping on top of Han to protect her, the man unfortunately managed to activate the explosives before collapsing, and now the station is collapsing on the base, irreversibly damaging the structure and many of the cadets. Following the base's evacuation, the newscasters report that about 3,000 people died that day. Because of all the deaths and resource losses caused by the station collapse, riots and terrorist attacks worsen during the next few weeks, and many start calling on the government to reinstate the DLP. While he speaks with the US ambassador to persuade him to give them a chance, Zhou has his aide read a prepared speech, pleading with the UEG to have faith in the enterprise. A few weeks later, the team who will continue to work on the lunar engines is sent to the moon in cryo-sleeping pods. Computer engineer Henyu goes to make sure everything is okay as soon as he wakes up. This comprises a I-550 and a video of his daughter Yaya, who converses with him very little due to the limits of 550. Turns out that Henyu was once employed by DLP, and has since been approved to work on a lunar project to access temperatures of 550C, which will command the entire base because he believes he can use it to turn the brief Yaya's video into a complete artificial intelligence of his deceased daughter's thoughts. Henyu discovers while collaborating with the other members of the team that computer researcher Zhao is in charge of 550C, and asks him to collaborate with him on the system's operation. Henyu and Zhao test the 550C for the first time by activating each base sector. Zhao gives Henyu the digital copy of his mind that the firm confiscated when they banned DLP, and says it's up to him if he wants to destroy it, or not while they wait for the computer to do its thing. Zhao is shown Yoaya's video footage by Henyu later on as he recalls the tragic day. Henyu was traveling with his wife and children when he lost focus and failed to see a truck approaching, causing the automobile to crash. Yaya had a few minutes left when his wife passed away suddenly, so Henyu brought her to the DLP to give her some peace of mind. Because the technology wasn't ready, the organization declined to assist, but Zhao, who had previously worked there, accepted to do the favor. Now, back in the present, Zhao is opposed to Henyu's request to use 550C on Yaya, reminding him that 550 was more than sufficient. The system detects an approaching level Z9 solar storm at a later time. The workers are anxious that their cars won't be able to keep up with the urgency of getting back to the base. 550C is fried in the process, but the drivers manage to approach base just before the solar storm lives by pushing their engines to the limit. Henyu proposes 550 to replace it in exchange for being added to the team that will create future 550 models, because AI is required to launch the project in 3 days. When Zhao says yes, Henyu transfers Yoaya's consciousness to a disk and gives the AI. After a few anxious moments, the crew checks the engines 3 days later, and they are thrilled to observe that the moon experiences a slight but noticeable angular displacement. This indicates that they can be entirely pushed away in 20 years, and their accomplishment restores faith in the cause among people everywhere. They test the engines once more, this time on Earth. A few months later, people initially believe it has failed as all of the screens go dark, but then they start to feel the ground tremble, and see a light beam coming from the astronaut base. People cheer that they will soon be able to move Earth completely, and scientists at the UEG confirm that Earth made an angular displacement. Years go by as the Moving Mountain project is renamed as the Wandering Earth, and the UEG keeps working on constructing more potent engines that will provide the whole push. The fixed 550C is doing the majority of the building, and is progressing at an exceptional rate. Each year brings another test that confirms their findings, and as a result, citizen acceptance of the project grows until the DLP vanishes entirely. But there's also talk about how certain people won't be able to enter the underground cities that are currently under construction, and that the standards for obtaining a pass are quite selective. The global internet is shut down, and humanity switches to a 60-hour schedule as Earth's rotation slows down yearly. Soon, the world was beset by a variety of meteorological calamities, including floods and sun radiation, which increased the incidence of cancer. After getting married, Liu and Han finally give birth to a boy, who will play the lead role in the first film. Their son will have difficulty obtaining a pass for the underground cities, which worries them a great deal. To make matters worse, Han contracts cancer from the sun's rays. Henyu continues to work on Yoaya's while assisting in the creation of the new 550, known as the 550W. After the station collapses 14 years later, Liu, now a major, attends an interview to be one of the navigators assigned to the rebuilt station. The interviewer, 550W, acknowledges that Liu has remarkable skills, but also notes that Liu has family issues, and believes it would be more sensible for Liu to remain on Earth and take care of them. Liu acknowledges his regret at leaving his family behind, but he knows that the only way to send his son to the underground city, under preferred policy, is to be selected for the base. The project scientists, who are listening to every conversation on the other side of the mirror. Yet while Henyu listens to Liu speak so impassionedly about his son, he can't help but think about his own daughter. Then, 550W makes the point that Han's life is about to end, which breaks Liu and makes him fail the stress test. Following that, Liu visits Han at the hospital since her health has gotten so bad that she is unable to stay at home. Han acknowledges that, given the present weather issues, it could be challenging to visit her homeland one last time. Later on in the evening, Henyu enters the base covertly and connects Yoaya's mind to 550W, motivated by Leah's passion. Henyu starts to cry because Yaya is reacting to him in an infinite way, this time, and she can tell he's somewhere else. At that point, Zhao and a few guards show in, and Zhao tries to talk Henyu out of his current situation and accept Yoaya's death. Henyu declines and uploads Yaya in full into the 550W, which instantly causes issues with the moon's system, and causes the engines to start malfunctioning. Henyu is tased and taken away by the guards, and Zhao returns Yaya to the disk, and turns off this 550W extension. Liu uses some old connections to pull strings in the meantime, and he borrows a jet to fly his family to Han's village. Following a few frivolous pirouettes, they land in Shanghai, which is currently a frozen wasteland. Han asks Liu if she wants to pass away with dignity or with a lot of wires and pipes attached to her when the time comes, as they gaze at the stars. When they talk about the system issue Henyu created at the UEG, They see how much it resembles the hacking they carried out on the drones and the elevator years prior. They're attempting to use 550W to bypass the system, but for some reason they keep getting blocked. The moon loses a sizable portion of its territory when its engines abruptly overheat and blow out of control. The moon is likewise being pushed closer to Earth by this explosion. When it occurs, Joe is close to the coast and witnesses the tsunami growing in size before hitting land. He then sends an emergency alert to all world leaders. Liu receives a message calling him back to duty due to the emergency situation, and since things will only get worse from here on out, the leaders start to open the underground cities to the public. Han passes away quietly in her sleep before Liu departs on his assignment, and Han's father takes their son to the underground city. Joe, meantime, addresses the UEG, pleading for their assistance with his contingency plan, which calls for unleashing all of Earth's nuclear weapons on the moon to cause its collapse and avert a collision. Because it is classified information, no nation has ever disclosed the total number of nuclear weapons it possesses. Nonetheless, for the first time in history, this is irrelevant, and everyone agrees to contribute what they can. Meanwhile, Zhao pays Henyu a visit in prison and informs him that they will be turning on Earth's engines earlier than anticipated, necessitating the reactivation of the worldwide internet to enable synchronized detonation control. Zhao wants Henyu to take care of one of the servers that is now submerged. He uses the evidence that he still has the disk containing Henyus and Yoaya's thoughts to persuade him. Because an asteroid belt has formed around the moon due to lunar debris, Liu and other top pilots are selected to carry the nuclear weapons. 3 teams are dispatched to Beijing, Tokyo, and Dulles, on Earth, to tend to the missing internet servers. The password is made up of 30,000 random numbers, which Zhao explains to everyone how to decode using a key. 550 then completes the task. In the meantime, the selected pilots' shuttles take off for the moon. A handful of the shuttles are struck by the asteroids, which are sudden and fast-moving objects that cause them to crash. As a result, the squad loses 200 warheads, leaving only 180 for explosion. 550W safely navigates the shuttles across the moon's surface, at least until another asteroid strikes another shuttle, crashing others, including Lius, and forcing them to land fairly forcefully. They ultimately lose 380 for warheads. The survivors decide to deliver the remaining warheads on foot after quickly looking for tape to patch their helmets in order to maintain oxygen. Liu leaves the shuttle and shuts the door, willing to give his life for the sake of the young people, because he doesn't want them to die so young. Then, he sends the shuttle back with the survivors. When the 3 teams reach the server locations on Earth and go underwater, they discover a variety of marine life has already established itself there. Henyu's team in Beijing uses drones and specialized tools to infiltrate the building and locate the server door. However, when they attempt to force the door open, the gadget malfunctions due to excessive pressure, severely injuring one of the men. Zhao tries to tend to the man's wounds, but he lacks the appropriate equipment, so the man passes away. Henyu and Zhao choose to carry out the job and make all the required connections to restore the internet while the majority of the squad removes the body. As Liu uses a vehicle to transport the remaining weapons, all of a sudden moon debris starts to fall on Earth, obstructing the backup team's path to the Beijing server. When the debris strikes the structure, it begins to tremble, and some hardware falls on Xiao's leg, trapping him. Before the water overwhelms him and kills him, Zhao chooses to give Henyu the password key, as the room starts to fill with water and he is unable to unlock the door with the aid of his drone. All of Earth's key areas are being destroyed by moon debris, and the people who had been quietly migrating to underground cities are now pushing out in fear. Joe receives bad news at the UEG, because the warheads are all different models. They cannot coordinate them in time to explode simultaneously. As Joe is about to give up, one of his men suggests an alternative. They might send additional astronauts and manually explode them, so agreeing to make a sacrifice. A few young people volunteer for the operation, which requires 300 personnel, but an older pilot interrupts and reminds them that it is their responsibility to do this task, and let the younger generation to take care of the future. After reaching a consensus, every astronaut over 50 boards the shuttles and heads to the moon. Wildfires and droughts will soon begin to spread around the world. Scientists soon warn of an oncoming disaster known as the solar crisis, which predicts that the solar system will end in 300 years and that Earth would be engulfed by the Sun in 100 years if it keeps expanding at its current rate. The United Earth Government, or UEG, made the decision to proceed with the Moving Mountain project, which involves building enormous engines in order to propel Earth out of the solar system. Due to the enormous cost of the operation and the rapid depletion of resources, Those who are indifferent to impending disasters begin to riot and demonstrate globally. When Leah's old teacher and training companions come, he is shocked to see them, but he can't say goodbye because his communicator is broken. Instead, he is put on a shuttle to return to Earth. Beijing is still offline, but the UEG certifies that the servers in Beijing and Dulles are back online. Henyu is experiencing difficulties as well because his room is getting inundated with water and he is unable to link the key to the correct computer. In a desperate attempt to find a solution, he links the mental disk to the computer just as the moon landing astronauts set off all of the nuclear detonations. The impact is avoided and the moon successfully implodes, but Earth must go quickly because additional debris is on its way. Henyu plays Yoaya's video and tries to get her to turn on the internet by giving her the key, but just then the water eventually envelops him, and he also perishes. Major cities start to experience riots and fear as lunar debris keeps falling all over the Earth, and the UEG sends out an emergency message stating that the mission has failed. Zhao, however, instructs his team to begin the countdown to activate the engines because he believes there is still hope. Though everyone believes him to be insane, Henyu's mind unexpectedly becomes active within the computer in Beijing. Following his reunion with his daughter, the Henyu AI sets to work, attempting to activate the server as a man heeds Xiao's instructions and pushes the button. As the Earth is forced out of the path of the lunar debris, everyone at the base watches in amazement as people celebrate and the tides eventually stop. As Liu observes Earth move from his position within the shuttle, he seizes the opportunity to capture a lovely film to transmit to his kid. Meanwhile, Henyu and Yoaya's mental backups unite with 550W. After 7 years, Earth returns to its 24-hour schedule as it floats away. Zhou is no longer with the UEG, but his assistant continues his legacy. With the lunar issue resolved, they can now go on to the next phase of the plan, which calls for flying close to Jupiter in 10 years to obtain the second boost needed to propel Earth beyond the limits of the solar system. Liu is in command of the space station that has been set up to monitor the engines. 550 controls the system, but the AI determines that this is difficult to utter and reverses the word to form Moss. Henyu learns via the AI that the Moss was behind the majority of terrorist strikes, including the drone takeover and the destruction of the lunar engines. It is confirmed that Moss from the first movie, which caused all the trouble, has come to the opinion that the greatest way to save human civilization is to annihilate humans. After viewing Yaya repeatedly,